On March 31st, 1971, the body of the Kabaka, now Sekabaka, returned to Uganda. At Idi Amin's request, the then president of Uganda, viewing ceremonies were held at various locations in Kampala, and people came to say their goodbyes. Kabaka Mutesa II had died in exile. Many Buganda had clung to the hope that one day he would return alive. Instead, he was found dead, alone, in a small London apartment, a king in poverty. He was finally laid to rest at Kasubi Tombs, the royal mausoleum built by his grandfather Mutesa I, making him the fourth Sekabaka to be buried there. Pythons are creatures of dominance. They hunt alone, they live alone. They have few natural predators. With dense specialized muscles, they wrap around their prey, cutting off the blood supply to vital organs, exerting pressure so intense it leaves no room to breathe. A grip measured in pounds per square inch designed to make escape impossible. That was the kind of stronghold Bemba Musota had, a ruler whose name Musota literally meant the python. Sometime between the 12th and 14th centuries, he coiled around the land that would one day become Buganda, squeezing its people into silence and submission, and it was in that desperation that the people turned to a stranger, Chintu. With the help of his agents, Chintu struck. They slew the serpent, beheaded him, and buried his head at a place now called Nagarabi, a hill whose name means to shut out evil. And from that hill, something else was born. Not just peace, but authority. Authority over land, over bloodlines, over life, both physical and spiritual. Ever since when a king builds his palace, he faces west, toward the place where evil was shut out, toward the source of power, where one sun set, another rose. And from that current of dominion, a new lion began his rule. About 4,600 years ago, the ancient Egyptians built the Great Pyramid of Giza, a tomb for pharaohs and for nearly 4,000 years, the tallest building on Earth, a monument that reached towards the heavens, lifting its kings to the gods. Some say that the sub-Saharan huts mimic that shape, that canonical homes are echoes of the pyramids. Maybe, maybe not. But I can tell you this. Muzibwa Zalampanga, the palace of the Kabaka, was the tallest building in Buganda, 7.5 meters high, perched atop a hill, visible to all. That's where the king stood at the apex of man. But unlike the pharaoh, the Kabaka did not simply cross into the afterlife. No, he remained. I was told at the tombs that he is a mediator, both dead and alive, his presence felt between this world and the next. And around him, the homes of his wives. Between them, an open court, where his 10 chiefs stood in formation, each one fixed to his position. Their homes mirrored this order down the hill. Even inside the palace, the poles that held up the roof, each was named for a chief. Each man had a post. The whole of Buganda was present, literally. Every chief was the body of his people, and if he faltered, they faltered too. Order was not asked, it was expected. The palace sat at the crossroads, connected to every road leading to the 10 provinces. Each road began at the feet of a chief, like veins, like rivers, like roots. Trade, tribute, messages all flowed through the king's court, and then back into the land again. Like a human body, from head to toe, and back again. the top of every pyramid is a point. If you flatten that pyramid, the point becomes the center. Look up from inside the Kasubi Tombs and you'll see it. There's a ring in the roof. That circle is the head of the Kabaka, and every new king had his head measured. A ring of thick thatch that was crafted to match the size. That ring was placed at the center of the ceiling. His mark, his place. Surrounding it were more rings, each wider than the last, each representing a clan of Buganda. The clan, or Echika, was a group of people who trace their bloodline to a common ancestor. Many are said to have followed the kingdom's founder, Chintu. It was he who gave them their totems, symbols they revered, never harmed, carriers of their identity, like the Nge, the Columbus Monkey clan. They alone had the sacred duty of roofing the palace and tombs. Using thatch, reed, wattle, and bamboo, they raised a roof fit for kings. A daughter of their clan, Nambi, became Chintu's first wife. Perhaps it was from this union that their duty was born. Marriage builds dynasties. Their bond with Chintu became the kingdom's growth. And who better to build the roof that brings all clans under one crown? Yeah. Step deeper into the tombs and you'll find bark cloth everywhere, draped over poles, curtaining the sacred heart of the chamber. That was the work of the Ngonge, the Otter clan. They crafted the bark cloth worn by the king himself. Once reserved for royals, bark cloth became the national attire after Kabaka Semokochiro's decree in the 1700s. A symbol of unity it became, of shared identity. But the Ngonge were not alone. The Mbogo, the Buffalo clan, were the royal carriers of the king. The Lungfish clan of the Muguya branch made the king's canoes. They were his sailors as he crossed the inland sea of Lake Victoria. The Fumbe, known for their connection to the spiritual, communed with forces beyond the veil. Around him, the clans rotated like planets around a sun, each one a limb in a living body. Each one, the closer to the throne they were, the holier their role. And the palace? It was not just a royal home, it was Buganda in miniature. From its center, roads extended in all directions. Each road led to a royal county. Each chief stood on those roads. Their homes mirrored their positions in the court. Their clans mirrored their duties in the tomb. From center to edge, everything reflected his place. The Kabaka in the middle of all of it. A man who belonged to no clan, and because he belonged to none, he stood above all. Even time bowed to the center. The king's life marked the rhythm of the kingdom, his birth announced by sacred drums, his presence honored in silence and ritual, his death wrapped in bark cloth and memory, and his widows would never leave. Because his spirit never truly left. This was more than a monarchy. It was an orbit. And at its heart, power radiated. Did you know that the Great Pyramid of Giza once gleamed in the sunlight? Polished with white limestone, it reflected the sun like a beacon, radiating power from the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu. Though time stripped away its shine, the pyramid still stood as a message carved in stone. That power was here. In Buganda, the Muziba Zalampanga building, though never covered in limestone, radiated a power just as profound. It didn't shine with sunlight, it shone with people, with tribute, with roads, with law. The Kabaka sat at the center, and from him, all things moved. From the palace, the king appointed the chiefs not just in title, but in function. Messengers ran outward from the capital, their legs carrying the king's voice to hills and homesteads far beyond sight. The roads they traveled on stretched like arteries, branching out from the heart of Buganda to every productive ridge and fertile valley. The Kabaka didn't just rule people, he mobilized them. Peasants owed labor. They laid roads, tended royal plantations, harvested for the crowns. Children too were given, sent up the ladder from families to local chiefs, from local chiefs to the court. And they were sent there to serve, to be molded, to rise if they were worthy. No soul in Buganda was untouched by the king's orbit. Some basked in it. Others burned. Even wealth flowed in his wake. Ivory, the kingdom's white gold, was carried south by royal merchants like Magagala sold in distant lands such as Chiziba. And when the coastal Arabs came, drawn by this radiance, they waited. Mutesa apparently made them sit for hours under the sun. Not because he had to, but because he could. And when the war drums beat in the capital, warriors rose. War was the echo of the king's anger, carried through valleys and forests. The signal that Buganda would not whisper, it would roar. Even the gods had to listen. When the war god Nende, through a medium, advised retreat in Budama, one commander agreed, but the others, they said no. And so they lost the battle. But Mutesa honored those who had stayed and punished the ones who fled. The Kabaka's reach was not symbolic. It had weight. It had teeth. Kauta, the royal tax collector, passed through the countryside like a shadow, and with him came the demand for obedience, paid in millet, goats, barkcloth, and silence. Even outside Buganda, his light reached far. Smaller states like Busoga were drawn into orbit, offering tribute, asking for favors. The Kabaka offered help in the succession struggles of Bunyoro, assisting a then-young Kabalega, a boy who would rise in power and put Buganda itself on notice. And yet, at the center stood the palace. When explorer H.M. Stanley visited, he found 3,000 bodyguards, each man a warning that power lived here. Approach only if summoned. But the sun must set, radiance dims, and the king must walk into the sacred forest. About 172 kilometers from the city of Kampala lies a hill called Nono. There, you find a shrine to Buganda's founder Chintu. Behind that shrine is a forest grove, and in that grove, his spirit lives. They say Chintu fled into that forest after killing his prime minister. He had wrongly believed that the man had slept with his wife. Overcome with grief and shame, Chintu disappeared into the trunk of a tree and was never to be seen again. That forest became sacred. When a king's fire went out, for the king was said to never die, his palace became a tomb, and part of it was transformed into the Chibira, the sacred forest. Just like Chintu, the Sekabaka, the dead king, was believed to dwell in the forest of his tomb. He was now in the world of the dead. But don't be mistaken, when I say tomb, I don't mean that the body was simply buried in a forest clearing. For the Baganda, the jawbone was the seat of the spirit, the cup of the soul. Where it went, the spirit followed. At least that's what Roscoe tells us. But Benjamin Ray, he wasn't so sure. He asked elders, priests, mediums. Each gave a different answer, but all agreed that the jawbone mattered. After 5 months of mourning, the jawbone was removed, washed in milk, washed in beer, until it turned white. It was then wrapped in barkcloth adorned with beads and cowrie shells, tokens of power from the clan heads he ruled in life. Those gifts were more than decoration. They were symbols of the king's authority, proof that even in death, he remained the magnet that held the clans in orbit. And when his fire went out, so too did the offices of the chiefs he'd appointed. they vacated their positions, clearing the way for a new reign. But not all kings followed this ritual. At Kasubi, the tomb of Mutesa I, things were different. Mutesa rejected this tradition. He decreed that no one would break off his jawbone, no medium would impersonate him, no voice would speak in his place. Because that was the practice too, you see. The dead king would gain a medium, a mouthpiece, male or female. They would walk like him, speak like him, advise the living king in his name. But Mutesa said no. No medium was chosen, no jawbone was disturbed. It was a declaration, a shift, the beginning of kingship dominating even the spiritual world. Yet still, Kasubi remained a palace. It had to be kept like one. It had its caretakers, its rituals, its pulse. And at that center, the center of it all, were the king's widows and his sister. But that is a story for another time. If you like this episode, don't just stop here. Go see it for yourself. I recommend local motion safaris. It's Ugandan owned, and they know the stories behind the places, not just the routes to get there. Whether you're chasing history, culture, or just want to see the beauty of the land for yourself, Local Motion will curate that experience for you. I've left a link below if you're curious. Anyways, see you next month for part 2, only on Those Who Came Before Us. Peace.